Our final two presenters are both Kevin Williams and Gerard McCallig, and they're going to take you through the generation of the export health certificates and then the verification of that export health certificate by the official veterinarian. So I'll hand you over now to Kevin and Gerard.
This is Gerard McCallig speaking now. Kevin, unfortunately, is experiencing technical difficulties. He cannot hear us. So what I'm going to do now is, as I said, Kevin and myself have prepared this presentation. So if you can see my screen now, I'll jump in and I'll just take you through the process until we can get Kevin back online. So the product that we're going to be taking you through today, we've three products for you today. It is a sweet and sour chicken, which has been cooked. It's a pork sausage roll. The pork ingredients have been cooked, and a beef lasagna where the beef has been cooked. So the first step you do, as has been stated previously, you actually have to be aware of your product details and what cert is required. We would recommend highly that you work with your local veterinary office for that. But the three products that we have selected today are meat products of Irish origin. I'll go into why that's relevant at a later stage. But what we're going to try to demonstrate to you today is that if you have, fundamentally, if you have the background work done, if you have your traceability documents ready, if you're aware of your CN codes, the actual process on traces isn't too onerous. Now, obviously, the veterinary office will have to do the traceability checks separate to traces. That will require a lot of work, but the point of the demonstration I'm going to go through with you today is that the traces element, once you have that work done, isn't that difficult. It was explained previously that the classic version will be archived eventually and we'll move to NT. I'll just give you a very brief explanation on that as well, just because fundamentally the process will not change, it's just the screens will. So the first step you take when you get onto this export health certification screen is you click on New. Now there's two ways that you can assign your nomenclature code to your consignment. As you can see there at the top of my screen, there is a row where you can enter the code quite simply. However, I recommend that rather than putting in the code, because the 8 and 6-digit codes do not work in lots of instances, you select the certificate first. So to do that, if you can see where my mouse cursor is currently, you select model, and then you scroll down on these list of certificates to the composite product cert, which is this one here, composite products from the EU 28/2012. Once you have selected that cert, all of the currently active CN codes that apply to the cert will appear on screen. So like I said, for my three product groups, it's 1902, 1905 and 2106. They're the 4-digit CN codes that apply to my consignment. So I will click on 19 here, and the first thing I click on, this is for my beef lasagna, is this 1902 CN code. So once I have that selected, this is the screen. I'm going to leave you on this screen for a second because this might confuse you when you're taking this step. You'll see here where it says model, and underneath it, there's a grayed out box, and it's the Colombian cert for ready-made meals for human consumption. To access the composite product cert, you must select up here in the top left-hand corner, type. There'll be a drop-down menu, and you'll go with composite products. When you've that done, the model cert will come up here. If you're looking for the transit and storage cert, it's the second one. By default, the composite product cert pops up. If I was certifying a single composite product or a single list of composite products with the same CN code, or the first 4 digits of it at the very least, so if it was 190210 and 190220, I could just assign it. That would be sufficient, and I'd move on to the next stage. As I'm going to go through 3 different products, what I do at this stage is assign and add new code. Once I've clicked on that, it'll bring me back to my nomenclature code browser, and then I select the next code that applies, which is my 1905 for my pork sausage roll. I've selected that, and then finally I'm going to add my third CN code, which is 2106 for my sweet and sour chicken. So once I have those 3 codes applied, I click on assign in the last instance. That will bring me into my references page. Now on the references page, the first item of note here is 1.2, the certificate reference number. This isn't the final certificate reference number that gets produced by the system. This is a local reference number for you. So what we've been doing here in our trials, we've been entering our local codes so that we can make these certificates more easily retrievable for ourselves. What we'd recommend is that you link it to an invoice number, an order history number, a container number, just a unique identifier that would allow you to bring up this cert in future more easily. the thing, and it's the most important part of this screen, it's actually the most important part from our own perspective as staff, is the attachments box. This is where you must upload the information related to this consignment, the commercial document, the CMR document, the necessary information that was used by yourselves as food business operators to generate the details of the consignment. And in addition, and this is what's important, and this is where the work will come for you in the background, the traceability information. Once I get to the certification page, and as Michael explained previously, you will see why that is important. And fundamentally, we cannot do our jobs without having received that information from you. The certificate isn't possible to be produced without it. So what I'm going to do here now is I have created 2 attachments. So they're dummy CMRs that we've created in a dummy traceability document. They're just to give you the impression of what would be beneficial for ourselves, because they contain all of the relevant information in these documents. So to do so, I click on Add there on the attachment screen. When I've that done, it brings up this Choose File button. What happens when I select this Choose File button is it will open a folder on my local PC. And from this folder, have my CMR here, my composite webinar CMR. I click on that. Now, actually, just on that, you can only upload 1 document at a time. It doesn't allow you to upload 2, so you have to upload each individual document individually. So I'm uploading my CMR. And then the second document I have here is my traceability document, just an Excel sheet I prepared just to give you, again, an impression of what will be required with regard to traceability. On this note, as I said, in this hypothetical consignment, all of the content produced hypothetically is of Irish origin. If you had third country material, so non-EU material that had come in on a health certificate, you would add it here too. That will be required by the veterinary office just to have that information available to them. But once I have my CMR and my traceability information complete here, I can move on to my traders page. So on my traders page, the first items I fill in are my consigner. That's the operator that is responsible for creating the consignment. The way the system is set up is once I have input my consigner and my place of origin will both fill. That does not need to be the case. If your consigner, which is the person creating the consignment, isn't the same place as the place of origin, you quite simply, there'll be a remove button here on the right-hand side of place of origin to remove that. And similarly for consignee and place of destination, they will automatically be applied once you've filled in, place of destination will automatically be applied once you've filled in consignee. However, we're aware they may not be the same place. In that instance, you will be able to remove the place of destination and put in the correct one. So what you'll do here in most instances is you'll select your place of, or your consigner, you'll put country of origin in as Ireland, and you'll type the name of your business. So we have just created a test environment for ourselves. It's DAFM approved FBO. And I click on search. What you will get in most instances is you'll get 2 results for your food business just because of how we have put them up onto the system. You'll see importer and establishment. Obviously, importers if you're importing goods into the EU, establishment is if you're exporting, so I select establishment. The consignee, again, what you can do here is there's a quick method filling these. You can select the ISO code of the country and then fill in their approval number should they be on the system. Once you have your customers registered to Traces, that is possible. However, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take you through the selection here. So I'll click on select. I select United Kingdom from the drop-down menu, and then I type in my customer name. Again, I've just created a test one for the purposes of training. It's called GB Importer. And that has been applied. And you'll see now, as I had stated previously, once I've applied the consigner and the consignee, my place of origin and my place of destination is filled. They are accurate from my records, so I can then move on to the next page, which is the consignment page. Now, the consignment page is where the majority of the work will be done. I'm not going to go into the import tool today. If you require more information on the import tool, there is a guide available on the gov.ie website. Because I'm just certifying 3 rows of information, I'm able to manually fill this in. And when you're doing that, the import tool is useful if you're using 10, 15 rows of commodities. It allows you to pre-populate the information. If you're only using 3, I actually would recommend just manually inputting it. So what you do here, I generally fill this identification of the commodities first. You always click on human consumption and then you do the sums up here. So my 1902, like I said, refers to my beef lasagna. I'm actually going to split my screen here because I have the CMR document, and I'm just going to show you again, just very briefly, how I'd fill this in. So this is the dummy CMR that I've created for this. Again, the idea of this, that this CMR document contains all of the information, every single part of the information that I need to create this consignment. And therefore, as DAFM staff, this CMR document contains all of the information I need to verify it. So that's why we recommend, if you can have it in a single document, it'd make our lives much easier, which in turn makes your life easier. So I'm going to split my screen here. Apologies, I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. You might be able to see it, but I'll leave it for now actually. So what I have here is I have the description of the goods in the CMR, and I'm just going to fill out my traces document based on the description of the goods as is presented in my CMR. So my 1902 again refers to my beef lasagna. So my manufacturing plant, this is the approval code of my plant. The approval code of my DAFM test FBO is IE00EC. I input that. Similarly, for the 1905, ththey're all IE00ECs. My manufacturing plant, this is the plant in which this consignment has been produced. My number of packages, again, it's the number of the type of packages. So if the number of packages pertains to the type. So if you select pallet, it's the number of pallets. If you select boxes, it's the number of boxes. What I have here is boxes across the board. So I'm just going to input 10 boxes. Then the nature of commodity, if I scroll across here on my screen, the nature of the commodity across the board here is a meat product. However, if you could need it to, you'd select milk and milk products, treated stomachs, wild stock, bladders, aquaculture products, and egg products. The three products I'm going to take you through today is meat product, but the process again is fundamentally the same. And then finally, what I enter, or sorry, the last two items I enter here is the net weight and the batch. So I have the net weight here. Well, it's the gross weight of the consignment, but it's the net weight of these products. So I will fill this in from my CMR. So my beef lasagna is 200 kg. My pork sausage roll, which is this row, is 100. And finally, my sweet and sour chicken is 300. So that's those filled in. And then finally, this is something that you will require yourselves. You can have this in a traceability document. We'll have to be able to verify this. So the traceability document that I had here, you'll actually need that for filling up the cert itself. So my traceability document, I'm just going to bring it up on screen just so that you can see it. I'll come back to it at a later stage actually, because it's more pertinent to the veterinary office in DAFM. However, you will require the batch numbers for the generation of the health cert. So this is the traceability document. I'm not going to go into it in too much depth until I get to the certification page, just because I do want to explain it in full. But what I'm looking for here is fundamentally the batch numbers for each row. So I have it done out here for myself. So I know from it, so my 1902, this is B 10,001 to B 10,007. The next one then is this, but A, and then my third batch is C. So there are my batch numbers. Again, DAFM staff will need to be able to verify that information that you've provided to them. Then the final thing I fill up on this screen are the total number of packages, the gross weight, and the temperature of the products. The total number of the packages is quite simple. It's the sum of the identification of the commodities. So in this instance, it's 30. The gross weight is the sum of the net weights plus any pallets used. So I actually had that present on my CMR. The pallets were 50 kgs. So you can see it there on my CMR, the heat treated pallet 50 kgs. So on my actual gross weight, I put in 650, and then I would select the temperature of the products as is appropriate. For this, I'm just going to pick chilled just as an example. So that is that screen then filled in full. Once I've that done, I can move on to the transport page. The transport page, the most important thing here is the transporter isn't the agency, it's the haulier that's actually responsible for carrying the load. So what you do here is it's similar to the process with consigner, consignee. You click on select. You select the country of your transporter first. That can be any country in the world. I'm using a test case again. We've created DAFM test transporter. Once I click search, that will be applied. So this is the transporter that we have created for ourselves. And then I'm going to talk you through this 1.15 means of transport. I'm going to click on type. This is the means of transport that this consignment has been brought to Great Britain in. The appropriate option, if Traces was working 100% correctly, the appropriate option, because it's the reality of the situation, would be ship and road vehicle the majority of the times. However, due to coding issues present on Traces, we actually do not recommend that you select ship and road vehicle unless your container number complies with a standardized international container number format, which is 4 letters followed by 7 digits. If you select ship and road vehicle, the container number has to be that format, or it quite simply will not allow you to submit the consignment for certification. So what we have recommended, because what is important is that the container number listed is what is presented at the BIP, because that is what will be checked, or the border control post. You select road vehicle, and then you input the appropriate container number here. For identification of the road vehicle, if the lorry, the truck, the haulier number that is picking up the consignment from your premises is the same as the one that is transiting through the Great British Border Post, we would recommend that you put that registration number, which is, for my vehicle, 2011D. So I'd assign that now in this instance. If I knew and I was confident that this lorry reg was going to be transiting through the BIP. If not, what you would enter in this instance is the container number that is leaving your premises that is transiting through the BIP. Ultimately, what is important is that what is leaving your premises, the unique identifier is input here, and then again here, my container number. And my container number was present on my CMR, it's IEC 001, and if I had a seal on this consignment, I don't have one generated on my CMR, and it's not a mandatory field for the purposes of submitting for certification, but if I had a seal number, I'd input it there. Then the next item that I must fill is the date and time of departure. So the date of departure has to be input in the format that is outlined here, day, month, year. I would take that from my CMR document. 1 second, just to remember myself when I had said we were sailing. The 28th of the 6th, 2021 at 1600. And again, every piece of information on Traces must comply with the formatting that is shown. The site is quite old. Like I said, it's going to be replaced with NT, so you must comply with everything as shown. NT is a lot more intuitive, doesn't have those requirements. The final screen is the route page. This is where you'd input the information that's related to where the consignment is leaving the EU. If it's going out through Northern Ireland, you actually select Northern Ireland as a member state here, and then you select Belfast Port or Larnport in the exit point. For this consignment, this hypothetical scenario, we're going out through Dublin Port. So all I would need to do in that instance is select Dublin as my EU exit point. So I click on select on that screen. I select Ireland from the drop-down list, and I click on search. That brings up the full list of Irish exit points. I select the appropriate one for my consignment, which is Dublin Port. And then the final item is the entry point. This is the port in UK, or the airport, or the point of entry essentially in the UK where your consignment is entering. In this hypothetical scenario, it is Holyhead. So again, I just click on United Kingdom from the drop-down menu and I select Holyhead. That then fundamentally is actually what you will do as an FBO to create a health cert. And just again, very momentarily, Traces NT, the process is identical. The only difference is instead of having to click through 5 screens, it's one, and there's autofill capabilities. So when you start typing in your food premises, it'll appear. When you start typing in your consigner, it'll appear. It's just a lot more intuitive. It's a modern system. It's much better than this. It's just not out yet. But that should be most helpful when it is. But once I have all of this information input into the system, the final step I do as a food business operator is I submit the consignment for certification. And this is where you find out if I've left anything out or made any mistakes, I'll receive an error message now. So I'm just going to press the button and we'll hope for the best. Yeah, so that when I've pressed the button and it goes through like that, that means there was no errors in my consignment. I enter my password. It requests that you enter your password when you're generating any health cert. And just to save time, you can use the same password for all subsequent signatures. So once I have that done, I quite simply sign certification and that submits it to traces for certification. However, we've explained this previously at our webinars. The notification system on traces isn't great for ourselves in DAFM. We see every cert that has been submitted for certification across the country, not specifically for the premises we're supervising. So what we have requested, when you generate these health certs, we don't expect you to have one. If you do, great, makes everyone's life easier. But it's quite likely that you'll have 5, 10 of these to go at once. Send us these codes. I'm going to highlight it now on screen. In an email, tell us the certification ready to go on traces, and then list the codes. We can search by your premises, but it makes everyone's life much easier if we have the specific reference code. And I'll show you why, because I can just copy this. So if I was copying it from an email, let's say, I'd return to the search screen, and now I'll take you through what will be the DAFM portion. So what I showed you there is what you'll do as food businesses. What I'm going to take you through now is what we'll do as DAFM staff. But again, the reason this is being shown to you is because fundamentally on traces, we're reactive, you're proactive. We can only work with what you have provided to us on the system. So we need the codes, we need the documents. We can't do anything without having received that information from you. So once I've received my certificate reference code, I can input it here, like I said, and I can click on search, and that brings it up. I, as a DAFM staff member, go into your organization or go into the certificate and start certifying it. I could also enter your business as the consigner, but like I said, it's much easier if you give us the codes. And I'll just bring your attention here. You'll see this when you submit it. The status will update to new. New means that you've submitted it for certification, but DAFM staff have yet to take any action on it. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to basically take you through the process that we will do as DAFM staff and why having the documents like I have shown to you would be very beneficial. So I click on open. The first thing I would do if I was a DAFM staff member here and I open this page is I would look for my attachments. If I didn't see any, I'd hope that I had received them from you by email, but basically I'd call you and say I can't do anything with this yet. I need the documents, send me the documents. So always ensure that the documents are present, because I cannot do anything without them. So I'm going to download my 2 attachments. I actually have them already, but just so that you see the process. And then very simply, I'm going to go through the consignment with the document, comparing the 2 to ensure that all details are correct. So I'm just going to do that very quickly now, just so you can get an appreciation of the process. So again, like I said, I have this CMR built in such a way that this is easy. If you have invoices, commercial documents related to your transporters, it will take longer for us to verify that. So just please be aware, the way the information is presented to us will dictate how we can respond. So again, I'm going to click through each individual page, making sure the information on the CMR matches my consignment. So my sender, which is my consigner, is my FBO. I know that is correct in any way in all instances. My consignee is my GB importer training. I check the address, 10 Downing Street, we're going to Boris. That is correct. Then I will check my place of origin and place of destination, which is the delivery of goods. That is correct. So if I have all of the information displayed like this, that's how long it'll take me to check and verify that information. So that's why it's important for you to have that here for us. Then I go to the consignment page. Again, I'm looking against the description of the goods to make sure that it matches my consignment. And this is where I'd start needing my traceability information to verify these batch level numbers, or batch numbers even. So the first thing I'm looking for is the description of the goods to make sure that it corresponds, to make sure that there was no clerical errors on your part. So I'm looking at my row here, 1902. So that relates to my beef lasagna. There's 10 boxes, that's correct. It's 200 kgs, that's correct. And then what I'd have to do is I'd have to bring up my traceability document and cross-reference that against the information that I've received to make sure that the batch numbers present pertain to the batches on the identification of the commodities box. So I can see here it's batch B 10,001 to B 10,007. That is accurate. For my pork sausage roll, which is the top one, which is 1902, it's the top, which is A's 10,001 to A 10,002. It's the second row. It's this one I've highlighted here. I'd verify that is correct. And then finally, my sweet and sour chicken cooked is C 10,001 to C 1007. I verify that is correct. That's that done. Then I verify this consignment page. This document, the traceability document, will come in and will be important later. So once I've that done, I can move on then to my transport page. Again, what I would do here, I'll just take you through it very briefly. I'd compare this to the CMR. I had it on screen there a second ago. Obviously, I entered it myself. I know it's all correct. Then I'd finally check the root page, ensure that's correct. Once I have that done, then I'm confident that all of the details entered by you as an FBO are correct. I'd proceed to the veterinary certification portion. So I click on that. This is the table that we need you to provide us the information for. So if you read as I'm going along here, this table relates to the species, the treatment, the origin, and the approved establishment from which this product had been derived. So they give you an outline of what's required here. I actually would recommend highly, you can download these certificates from Traces, but honestly, go to the DEFRA website, familiarize yourself with the certs that you will need to produce, and familiarize yourself with the requirements within, because that will allow you to prepare and give this information to the veterinary office or the certifying body that will prepare your consignment. But like I said, I have this document prepared in such a fashion that it makes my life tremendously easier when I'm filling this in. So I'm going to split my screen again. And again, I have it laid out in such a fashion. I'm going to talk through my traceability document with you briefly. The way I have it laid out here is actually, it contains more information than is actually necessary for the composites. So it's the species, the animal ID, the slaughter plan code, the kill date, the processing plan code, and the pack date, and then the treatment and batch of the consignment. I also have included net weight. Again, these are just dummy documents that you don't need to take much heed to what I've input. It's just, this is how it's displayed, and this allows me to actually produce the cert in the outturn. The kill dates are included. They're required for the fresh meat cert. They're not required for the composite cert. But I just have included them because this would be how I expect that you have the information. Similarly, the treatment I've input here, I've just input the letter. The treatment relates to the heat at which these products have been treated to. They pertain to a range of temperatures. You could have the temperature that has been cooked to on the traceability information. However, again, to make our lives easier, we would really, really, really appreciate if you had it laid out exactly like the cert requires. So what I do then is, if I've received this from you as an FBO, I use this document then to fill in the health cert. So I'm going to split my screen with it, and then I'm going to fill it in. So for my pork product, I enter the code POR. You see it there on screen. The treatment is the second column. I enter the treatment for the pork. You see here, it's just on my right hand side, it's treatment type A. The origin, I explained at the start, the origin of all of the materials in this hypothetical consignment is Irish. So I put in IE here. And then finally, I put in the approved establishment from which it's derived, which is the slaughterhouse, which is the IE 001EC. If you had multiple origins, so if you had multiple countries from which your materials were derived and you had multiple establishments from which your product even was derived, you could input them all here. So you could have a list of slaughter plants, a list of processing plants. Again, what we'd appreciate in that scenario is if you do have your raw materials or input are derived from multiple locations, we'd actually appreciate a summary sheet. We expect that there'd be a long list of raw material inputs. If you could provide us with a summary sheet that lists the processing plants, the slaughter plants, the information that we require to complete certification. If you could have that in a summary sheet for us, it'd be great. If not, we will have to trawl through all of the information that you provided to us so that we can ensure that we've input the correct information here. So again, how you give it to us is very important because that enables us to do our job. But then finally, again, when it's this simple, when it's presented like this, all I have to do is what I'm doing currently, which is enter the species, enter the treatment. The treatment type for the pork was A. Approval is IE, and then again it came out of the same plant, so it's IE 001EC. And then finally my chicken, you can see here it's not POU for poultry, it's poultry farmed game, which is PFG. So I'd enter PFG here. My treatment type again is A. My approved establishment is IE, and then my slaughter plan code for this particular product is IE 002. So that is this table filled up. In reality, for the veterinary office, like I said, because you'll have multiple slaughter plants or multiple processing plants from which your materials are derived, it'll likely take a good bit longer than I've just shown you. But like I said, the take-home message for you is if you can present this information to us in the fashion that we require to complete this cert, it makes our lives much easier, which in turn makes your life much easier. So once I have this done, I can ignore my traceability document now. I scroll down and I fill in the rest of the information that is relevant to this particular consignment. As Michael would have explained to you previously, and James, The only information that I need to fill is information that pertains to this consignment. The first item it's looking for here is the Bse status of the country. This is only pertinent in consignments that contain fresh meat of bovine, ovine, or caprine animals. So for us, because I've used bovine product in my beef lasagna, I do have to attest to this. Fundamentally, this isn't actually of concern to the food business. This is for DAFM staff. I choose the Bse status. Ireland, as of the end of May, I believe, is negligible Bse risk. So I would select that button. And once I have that done, I can quite simply scroll down through the rest of this, because the rest of this isn't relevant as it all pertains to Bse status. For our particular consignment here, this part isn't actually relevant, but Michael spoke about it, so I'm just going to talk about it again briefly. It's the dairy product. This is the traceability information for a composite dairy cert that would be required. It's where the origin of the milk has come from, the country, so the ISO code would be input there, and then the approval number of the establishments from which the dairy products are derived. So we would require that information for the dairy composite cert, and down here either, again, Michael went over it, it's the specific treatment the dairy consignment has received. So it's what species the milk has derived, and then the heat treatment it received, whether it be pasteurization, sterilization, high temperature, short temp or time pasteurization, so on and so forth. Then finally, for fishery composites, you'll see here processed fishery products that originate from approved establishment. So all you need for fisheries composites is the establishment and the ISO code of the country. And then eggs, it's the ISO code of the country, and then again the processing treatment for that product. But for meat and meat products, which is my consignment, all I actually needed was the species, the treatment, which is the process it has undergone, the ISO code of the country, and the plant it has come from. So once I have that done, that is actually the composite health cert complete in full. What I would do as an official veterinarian in this instance is I'd come down here and I'd press the button on the bottom of my screen, which is submit decision. Obviously, we won't do it in this case because it's not October the 1st. So I just save as in progress, and I'll show you what the outturn looks like, which is the final produced cert. So I'd save that as in progress. Once I have that done, this is the exact same screen that would appear as if I was a veterinarian who had completed this consignment. It would say the expert health certificate has been created. I can open the certificate or I can print. When you click on print, it does not send the item to your local printer. It quite simply opens it up in a PDF document. So this is what the final produced cert will look like. Essentially, it's just transposing all of the information that I have input thus far onto the Traces system into the EHC document. I'll scroll down here. This is the information that relates to commodities. And then finally, this is the information that's imposed on the actual health cert. It's not aligned. It's, again, buggy enough system, but all of the information is present and correct. The information that I did not attest to has been crossed out. And what I would do as a veterinarian is, well, there'd be local arrangements on exactly how these certs are going to be got to you as a food business, but I would print, stamp and sign it. Or alternatively, once I have validated this cert, I'll go back to the Traces screen here. What you'd see here is a food business. Once I have this once I submit my decision, the status would upgrade to valid. You'd see in progress. Once the veterinary office has signed off on it, it would go status valid. In that case, and the vet wasn't on site, but you wanted to print it for them so that you would have it on site for their arrival, what you would do as a business was you'd log back into Traces, you'd bring up this code, you'd open your cert, you'd very simply click on print, you'd click on print again, all the language that you require is English, and you'd print the cert for them so that they could stamp and sign it. And that concludes the generation of an expert health certificate on Traces. Again, the purpose of this was just to show you that if you have the background work done, the process on Traces isn't too onerous. It's just that we do require the information before we can proceed as DAFM staff. Sorry for the technical difficulties at the start. And with that, I will hand you back to Peter. Thank you.